So first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to come in here and appreciate you guys coming in and listening to what we're going to be talking about today with opportunities for genetic improvement. And you might think it's kind of odd for someone who is a mere pig farmer to talk about the genetic side of it and how we can utilize that to make our pigs healthier. And honestly, I mean, produce a better product for our consumers. But it goes beyond that. So, I mean, what if PRRS were not an issue? I mean, who in this room raises pigs, or, I mean, everyone's here for the same purpose. I mean, we're here at the World Pork Expo. I mean, if PRRS weren't an issue, I mean, what type of impact would that have? It'd be immense. I mean, on our farm, we have 750 sows. We're not large in the grand scheme of things. I mean, sometimes we may be considered a hobby. But we are a stable PRRS positive herd, and we've had the same strain of PRRS for about 20 years. Our sow herd weans PRRS negative and flu negative pigs, and they seroconverted about 9 weeks. But if we got a different strain of PRRS in a farm of our size and capacity, that could be extremely detrimental. I mean, for us to recover from that, I mean, we have to make a decision if we repopulate the sow herd and continue to try to fight back from it, or we just become a contract grower. Because that's a reality for us on our farm. We're a multi-generational family farm. My early years, I grew up in East Central Illinois, raising pigs with my family. My mom was extremely active within the National Pork Board and state organizations. I like to give a huge thanks to Ernie Barnes from the National Pork Board. For those of you who know him, he's a great asset. But I was also a nationally renowned hog caller. I kind of got my claim to fame here at the World Pork Expo when I was about 5 years old. So I hung a big banner whenever I was a youngster. And that was always, coming to the World Pork Expo was always a highlight of our summer because as a young farm family, that was our only vacation, was coming here. Today I farm with my wife's family in Logan County, Illinois. On our farm we raise soybeans, corn, pigs, cows, goats, chickens. We've got a few dogs. The most important thing we raise on our farm is our kids. That's really what our focus is developing our farm and possibly giving our children that opportunity to come back to the farm. And that's why we look to diversify and continue to grow and do things differently and do things better so we can provide that opportunity for our kids. The picture in the center, I also do a lot of social advocacy, which we'll talk about on this next slide. But that picture in the center, that is my most popular picture I've ever posted to date. That was my young daughter Reagan nearly 4 years ago. When I posted it on my Facebook page, it got 2,500 likes and about 300 or 400 shares. A close friend that owned a boar stud shared it on his Facebook page. It got 20,000 likes and a few thousand shares just in that first week that it was posted. This is still being shared today. It was just shared last week. It got a few thousand likes and was shared 1,500 times. So it goes to show, even though, I mean, a picture is very, very minute in the grand scheme of things when you guys are scrolling through Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram, whatever you guys prefer, it sticks around for a while. So, I mean, a photo like that may seem rather small, but I mean, that's one that's had some true staying power, and Reagan doesn't look quite like that anymore, but it sure was fun. So I used to work with the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance, so I was elected to be part of their Faces of Farming and Ranching, and so that's where I really began to become comfortable talking about what we do on our farm, sharing our farm story, and really begin to build that relationship with the consumer, because that's what my true focus is trying to build that relationship and rebuild that trust in what we're doing on our farms, because there is a great concern and great disparity with how we grow and raise our livestock. So gene editing. So it's an emerging technology that allows insertions, deletions, and changes to specific pieces within the genome. So it's very, very precise. This is something that could occur through selective breeding. Take, for example, the dairy industry, Holstein cattle. So it's very well known that horned Holsteins produce much more milk than the polled Holsteins, and so you have to dehorn all those cows before they come into production, just for that increased type of milk weight. And so if we were to do that through selective breeding by selecting those polled animals continually over time, and which I'm sure has already been done, it just takes a significant number of generations. With gene editing, you can do that in one single generation. And it's very, very quick. It's very, very precise. There's a lot of opportunity with that. And it can be introduced to individual animals as a component of the genome to make it hereditary or not. So we've all heard about potentially the PRRS resistance pig that was developed by Missouri and Kansas State a few years ago. And so there's an opportunity for us to not have PRRS be an issue anymore, which is immense. But at the same time, those changes that are made, it doesn't necessarily have to be, or could potentially not be, hereditary. And so they could have an eliminator gene where whenever those pigs go, if you put them into reproduction, they wouldn't be able to transmit that PRRS resistance to that next generation because there could be an eliminator gene in that sequence, so it stops at that one individual animal. And so take, for example, like the Zika virus. Here's another instance where there has already been that strain of mosquitoes, or that genetic change to that breed of mosquitoes, or species of mosquitoes, to be able to eliminate the Zika virus. But it would completely wipe out that species of mosquitoes. And so what would occur is that they would be able to breed, but those eggs wouldn't be able to hatch. And so the question is, I mean, how would that affect the other species of mosquitoes? That's a great concern. That species of mosquito only breeds with that specific species of mosquito, but given the consumer reaction, that hasn't came to fruition yet at this point in time. But I mean, there's a lot of opportunities within gene editing that can be extremely impactful. What is CRISPR? I'm going to stick with that acronym versus trying to say the entire definition of it because it's a lot easier. But CRISPR is the technology that gives you the ability to perform these type of very precise and very specific gene edits. And so the Cas9 is the protein that basically it'll go down that genome and look for that very, very specific sequence that you're trying to focus upon making that alteration to. And I always like to think of it like Microsoft Control F. So you go in and you hit Control F, you're trying to find something, change it, delete it, or replace it. It's very similar to that. And so it also can be really related to whenever you're identifying that gene to be edited. So say you're in New York City and you have a picture of this criminal and you're trying to figure out who it is. So you're walking down the street and you're holding this picture up to this young man, Matthew, here. Nope, it's not this guy. We got Richard here. Nope, it's not this guy. Then we got Leakin over here. Oh, it's this guy. No. And so it's similar to that. So basically it'll go down that genome chain until it finds that specific portion of the sequence to be changed or altered. It's very, very precise. And so that's what really gives this a little bit different twist. So who benefits from gene editing or the use of CRISPR type of technology? People. So we begin to think about the impact it has upon us. And honestly, this is going to be our greatest go-to-market type of advantage because it's not focused upon solely within agriculture. So we begin to think about like GMOs. All the benefits were primarily consumer facing. Yes, we can develop we're able to develop higher yielding crops. So we can potentially feed more people. But at the same time, the majority of the view is that we're raising greater amounts of crops and there's greater income from the farmer. But begin to think if we could eliminate sickle cell anemia, HIV, diseases that commonly affect the human race, is immense. Pigs, we begin to talk about PRRS. That's a disease that afflicts every farmer in the United States in one fashion or another, whether you have it or you're trying to keep it out. It's money that gets taken away from your bottom line. TGE, PED, there's immense number of diseases that there's opportunity that we can utilize this technology for. And the planet, we begin to think about how we can affect things within our biome and the type of things, and how we grow our crops and how we can make them more nutritious or more resistant to drought and things like that. So potential benefits. So within the pigs, which we're here for and we're really focused upon is that increased disease resistance. So we talk about the PRRS. So if we can eliminate PRRS, and usually it's not the PRRS that causes the greatest challenge. It's those secondary diseases and secondary challenges that really begin to plague the growth and efficiency of those animals. And so, if we can increase that disease resistance, we'll essentially be generating or growing a healthier pig, which in turn improves feed efficiency. So, those animals are more sustainable, decreases any type of pathogen shedding. So, the pork and what we produce is safer, and improved nutrient utilization. So those pigs are more efficient. Our carbon footprint is decreasing because it's not taking as much to grow those pigs. And we can also begin to look at decreased aggression from a welfare standpoint and also from meat quality. There's all kinds of different things that with utilizing this technology we can begin to look at and impact how we grow pigs and how we raise our animals each and every day. Risks and concerns, public misconceptions. So, I mean, that's one of the greatest concerns. So we begin to think about whenever GMOs rolled out at first. I mean, I was a young guy. I was back in the early 90s, and they were met at the farmer's doorstep, and we were ecstatic because we were able to use Roundup. It would kill everything in the field, and I mean, they looked clean, they looked great. We fast forward to 2018. I mean, we have March Against Monsanto. You begin to talk, you go into any grocery store, you have how many non-GMO or non-GMO verified products. It's viewed as something that's extremely negative in many capacities. And so, I mean, that's a big risk and concern. Intentional misinformation. I mean, whenever you begin to make edits to the genome or to that specific sequence, I mean, there's going to be intentional misinformation just as a selling point for another product. And emotion always wins over science anymore. We have to have that technological background and level of comfortability. But whenever I was working with the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance, I mean, the focus was building that relationship, building that emotional tie with the people that you were talking with, because technical discussions typically are not of interest. I mean, they want to feel good about what they're putting on their table. And so many times just the emotional feel, what they hear from a friend is going to make their decision. So a big risk that I personally have is who owns the technology. I mean, how are we going to be able to use it? Because a farm of our capacity, we have 700 sows. I mean, we're not a big fish by any means. Are we even going to be able to afford to utilize this type of technology? Are we going to be able to afford to utilize the genetics for this PRRS resistance pig? Because it would have a great impact upon our farm and our next generation of kids coming up. So who owns this technology? And I mean, right now, I mean, there's eventually going to be a licensing fee that's going to be associated with this, because when this technology was developed between, I believe it was MIT and UC Berkeley, there's some challenges on who actually owns the development of this gene editing technology. And so eventually there's going to be more of a cost. Who will have access to it? I mean, we don't want it to be those companies or organizations that live in the tallest and towers that have the most ivory. And I mean, we want it to have something that would be accessible to all types of farmers, all types of people, and not be isolated just to those that have the biggest checkbooks or deepest pockets that can afford to utilize it. And who will regulate it? I mean, it was a great thing. Sonny Perdue on May 28th made a comment about this specific type of gene editing technology and how it was going to be regulated in a sense. And I mean, they weren't going to impose any additional regulations thereto what is already in place today, which is relatively strenuous. I mean, to get a GMO product to market, it takes over 13 years. So there is a very strenuous amount of product development and time before this product will hit, or this type of technology can hit the SLAT level. And how will it be regulated in other countries? So we've seen what GMOs and the acceptance in some other of the foreign countries are. I mean, there's some countries, I mean, from just feedstuffs that we use from ractopamine. We're part of a Palein-free program. It has a little bit of a premium to it, which is nice, but at the same time, we begin to utilize this PRRS resistance type of pig. Are there going to be some markets that are going to be closed to the U.S. pork or pork that's been raised in other countries because they're utilizing this technology? How is it going to be regulated overseas? So another one, when we get to more of a personal level, designer babies. And so, I mean, personally, I would love to have a little bit more hair. I mean, I was blessed with great genes on both sides of my pedigree for receding hairlines. And my dad, he has a lot more hair than I do. So, I mean, if I could have more hair, that would be great. So you begin to get selective, and it begins to become more of a novelty than really focused upon helping people and helping diseases. Religious beliefs, there's always that question or concern. I mean, are we playing God? Are we injecting too much science into nature? Are we trying to do too much? Wrongful use. I mean, there's always that opportunity for this to be misused and abused. And I mean, it certainly can happen where, I mean, if you're trying to develop like that ultimate soldier that has stronger bones, run faster, can see farther, is stronger than anybody. So I mean, there's always that opportunity that it can be misused and abused. And so those are some risks and concerns about this type of technology. So Payoff. So I mean, as a pig farmer, we're always looking for opportunities and ways that we can do our jobs better. And we do that through continual improvement. And utilizing this type of technology is just one tool in our toolbox that we can use to potentially do that. So it has a great impact upon what we'll do each and every day. Cultivate support for responsible use. And so we really have to focus upon how this technology can be utilized, not only within our industry, but within human health and within plant health as well, because there's a lot of opportunity, and we have to really focus upon that responsible use of it and gaining consumer acceptance. Because essentially, I mean, with utilizing this technology, you're not inserting different genes. You're altering the genes that are already there, and there are things that can happen through selective breeding. And so, I mean, it's not like we're completely changing, inserting a gene from from bovine into a pig. It's a process where it can be performed through selective breeding, and producers utilizing the technology and seeing how it's adopted. I would personally say that if there became opportunity and there wasn't global ramifications, I mean, we'd jump right on board with being able to utilize PRRS-resistant type of technology on our farms. So collaboration is critical with technology like this. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ag groups, from agronomy to the livestock side, from animal health, that all work within this organization. I mean, every one of these representatives in the trade show here, I mean, they have a stake in it, and they have an interest in what type of impact this could have upon their businesses. And so there was a coalition that was developed within the ag community to really kind of streamline messaging, really kind of build that relationship on not everybody trying to recreate the wheel, and really kind of focus upon going at it at a similar type of perspective, I mean, from a regulatory standpoint as well. So within that, I mean, we're really focusing upon the dedication to responsible use, and I mean, really fighting diseases, not necessarily looking at how our pigs can be more efficient or how can we yield higher bushels. I mean, what we're looking at is, I mean, how we can eliminate types of diseases, how we can eliminate hunger and things like that, and gaining consumer acceptance. And honestly, the greatest key to gaining consumer acceptance with this type of technology is going to be through the human health side. If we can see that direct type of impact in relation to elimination of HIV, sickle cell anemia, things like that, the acceptance of this within animal agriculture and plant agriculture is going to be much more streamlined and much easier. And how will this resonate down at the slat level? How are farmers going to accept this? So National Pork Board and National Pork Producers Council have made a very strong investment within this type of CRISPR technology. From the standpoint of CRISPRcon, which was a very large conference completely focused upon this type of technology that just recently happened out in Boston. Last year I was fortunate enough to attend out at UC Berkeley. They're focusing upon the legislative side of it because, I mean, like we said before, this could be regulated outside of our toolbox extremely quickly. And the research side of it as well, and how this technology can be utilized. And other commodity groups look at pork as a leader because as we were at CRISPRcon last year, I mean, we were one of the most prominent sponsors, and we took that step and took that risk to be able to get ourselves involved within this type of technology and understand its impact. So what is CRISPRcon? So it was a conversation about science-based type of technology, society, and the future of gene editing. So the real goal around this was to have a very, very broad dialogue about how gene editing could impact the human race, animal agriculture, plant agriculture. And should we be making this transition from the lab into society at large? Because there is still great concern about how this technology can be utilized. And people that were at this, so, I mean, I was one of two farmers on a panel, or on one of the panels, and there was 50 panelists throughout the 2-day seminar. And so it was myself, a pig farmer, and there was an organic farmer, which so happened his name to be Tom too, from California. And so ag in general had very little representation on the panels, but we were extremely impactful in the representation of who was there. And my role was a farmer perspective on the panel that I was on. So our discussion was around the future of CRISPR in 2050 and the implications it may have upon our farm or agriculture as a large. So just on my individual panel, we had a pastor. So we begin to talk about, by utilizing this technology, are we playing God? Are we developing designer babies? We had a couple entrepreneurs that are inside of this type of technology, whether they have businesses or fields that are related to the genetic type of technology. And the lady to the left, she was from the NPR, and so she was discussing, some of the questions and concerns, and she does a lot of work around this type of technology, and she was really focused upon the designer babies type of things. So who else was there? DuPont Pioneer had a very strong presence. They had a great following and great number of people there. Monsanto had a couple individuals there as well. The National Corn Growers Association was very well represented. American Soybean Association and Pork Checkoff. So whenever I got there, of course I was very concerned. I'm one of two farmers that are going to be on a panel at UC Berkeley that's typically relatively controversial. So I had some concerns. I was a little bit nervous. I was scared. Whenever you walked into our first lunch before the session started, and we see all these friends in the room. So we had support there. The presence from the agricultural side was very, very strong. But at the same time, I sat down and talked with Paul Shapiro that night from HSUS, and that was one of the most uncomfortable conversations I've had in my life. But still, it was a very progressive conversation that we have differing views, quite apparently, but he is no longer with the organization, but still it was something that Bill Even and I had a great fun talking with him. So why is this important? For me, gene editing it's very impactful upon what we do on our farms, because as I said whenever I started the presentation, we're focused upon developing our farm and growing our farm for that next generation, giving them an opportunity to come back to our farm. And so raising pigs has been a great way for my father-in-law whenever he got out of high school. And so the hopes and dreams are one day that we'll be able to take over the farm and continue to grow that land base. So maybe the two young girls off to the right have a chance to come back and raise pigs if they so wish. That's always the hope, and that's kind of our ultimate dream, is to be able to have an opportunity that they can come back if they would like to. So social media, I am relatively active. I probably use Snapchat a little bit more now than I do Facebook or Instagram. But you always begin to think about where people get their information from, and it's those social media platforms where a lot of times, a lot of hours are consumed scrolling through those platforms. And so beginning to utilize the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Snapchats to discuss this type of information is very, very important. And how can we join the type of discussion? CRISPRcon just occurred earlier this week. Sorry, Kevin Wakey was out there. And so, how can we join the discussion and conversation? So, begin to make it personal. Talk about how that impacts what you do each and every day. And from my perspective as a pig farmer, how that can impact what we do. Is there concerns that I personally have around it being misused to create an ultimate warrior? Sure. Or designer babies? Absolutely. But, we have to look at the positive side of it, and that's really what we're focused upon, especially within the National Pork Board, the disease resistance. Some potential watch-outs. Whenever you are on social media, there's always those trolls and individuals that are going to try to lead you down a rabbit hole. Always try to be very cautious of who you begin to engage in conversations with, if you do, because it can become very challenging. And get engaged. Be excited about it, because this type of technology, it is very exciting. At CRISPRcon, there was probably 400 to 500 people that attended that event, from all different types of fields of work, from human health to education, and from agriculture. And so, if we're not telling our story, if we're not getting out there and talking about what we do on our farms, someone else is going to be. As we sat down with Paul Shapiro, HSUS really loves to tell our story each and every day. And so, if we're not doing it, they're doing it for us, and it's not always in the most positive light. So we've got to do our part as well.